Shalom, friends of Israel. I am Sal Isabram, National President of Jewish National Fund USA. Thank you for joining us on our daily briefing from Israel. This is day 18 of the war in Israel. We thank you for being with us. As many of us have been seeing and reading, the situation on college campuses has been extremely concerning. We're glad to have Jacob Bain with us today, the CEO of the Israel on Campus Coalition. The ICC's mission is to inspire American college students to see Israel as a source of pride and empower them to stand up for Israel on campus. The ICC's role in this effort is to unite the many pro-Israel organizations that operate on campuses across the United States by coordinating strategies, providing educational resources, sharing in-depth research, and increasing collaboration. The Jewish National Fund USA Baruchon Center is committed to strengthening the lifelong bonds between Americans and the land and people of Israel. And therefore, JNF USA is a proud funder of the ICC. Jacob, thank you for being with us, and take it over.
Thank you so much, Saul. And my heart goes out to everyone on this call. And I just want to say that in the midst of what is the worst emergency that the global Jewish people, and certainly our Jewish people and community in the United States have faced since the Holocaust, it is kind of a relief for me to take a moment and spend some time with my JNF USA family today. You know, when this all started on Saturday morning, 18 days ago, one of the first things I saw was that Russell was there. You were actually there, Russell, and had just touched down in Israel. And little did any of us dream what would be coming. So, and I'll say that one of the reasons that it's important and special to be with my JNF family today is that I just think about all of the seeds that we've planted over so many years, whether it's sending thousands of students, especially non-Jewish student leaders, to Israel on Caravan for Democracy, whether it is the faculty fellowship. I'm a member of the JNF USA Faculty Fellowship Committee, and again, just scores and scores of faculty over the years have been brought to Israel and seen the real Israel for themselves as a result of all of our collective efforts in the JNF movement. And so that's something that I think is really special. And Russell, I saw that in your email last night, you know, you really highlighted the fact that over 100,000 Israelis in the north and the south have been displaced, and the needs from the north to the south are greater than ever in terms of the work that we've got to do at this moment to build the land and the people of Israel. And so I actually am looking at some open source intelligence now that says the number is closer to 200,000 in the latest estimates. So I just thank you for everything that you're doing and that we're able to do together as a JNF movement. Now, we are activating everything. So all of those investments over the years, both the JNF USA investment in its own Caravan for Democracy initiatives, in the Faculty Fellowship, in the College Summit. We're going to have one in a little over a month here in Denver at the largest ever JNF USA Global Summit. And all of that is coming to fruition. All of those tools are being activated. And it's not only that, but it's, as Saul said, the fact that the Baruchon Center has invested at ICC over many years now, since at least 2015, in a sophisticated infrastructure to confront exactly a moment like this. And what we're seeing it is quite dramatic, because one of the things that Russell and that Yael Septi-Kane and Scott Schreiber and you, Saul, know is that what we're facing here on the college campuses is not a grassroots movement, right? It's not some campaign that's from the bottom up, that's organic, with students spontaneously demonstrating in support of Hamas. It is a professional top-down operation. It is highly organized. And one of the things that the people who've been watching this for a long time and fighting this war for a long time understand is that American Muslims for Palestine, which is the principal organization in the United States that is working to end American support for Israel, is literally housed in the same Chicago-based corporation as the National Students for Justice in Palestine. So when you saw just days hours after this horrific massacre, 1,400 Israelis dead, 3,700 wounded, more than 200 hostages in Gaza, 7,500 rockets fired from Gaza since this all began. In the context of that, even before an ounce of Israeli retaliation had occurred, we saw these pro-Hamas protests break out on campuses from coast to coast. And my point about that is that it did not just happen. It's highly organized. There are political organizers handling it. There are these big professional campaigns with communications experts, et cetera. And one of the other pieces that has really become clear over the past couple of weeks is that the online information war is the center of gravity of this conflict. And so what do I mean by that? Everything that's happening on the ground is obviously critical. Militarily, the kinetic activity we're seeing in the north, the south, and beyond, all of the absolutely vital people building, state building, institution building, humanitarian efforts that JNF USA is sponsoring. But the center of gravity is the information space, in the sense that we saw in 2021 that you have to make just as strong an effort online, because that's where people are living today. You can look at all the data, all the statistics, and especially when it comes to our college campuses, our students need support on a couple of fronts right now. One is physical security. I mean, ICC, our National Operations Center that's up 24/7, has never received so many simultaneous requests from local Hillels, local Chabads, local AIP High chapters, local students, local faculty for physical security advice and assistance. And the second is that they need us to continue to amplify pro-Israel voices online, on social media, on Snapchat, on TikTok, on Instagram. That is as much where this war is being fought as anywhere else. And in terms of the next phase here, if we do come to see an expansion, especially into southern Lebanon, if we do get into a scenario where Hezbollah's missile arsenal is being unleashed, and we see very significant civilian casualties that will necessarily result in southern Lebanon, our adversaries have prepared a massive propaganda infrastructure to exploit that. So if we have just witnessed the worst massacre that's been live streamed, in the history of the world, perhaps, the Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran agenda is perhaps to create an even worse one, committed necessarily by the IDF in southern Lebanon. And so we know that the campus itself is always hyper responsive to events in the region, but also what we saw in the past couple of weeks is evidence in slow motion before our eyes of the truism that our adversaries' information warfare tactics in the United States begin on the college campus and then they radiate outward. That's why we first saw the activism, saw the rallies on our college campuses, and then in a matter of days, we saw those rallies and those protests and that messaging break out onto our city streets and into the public square. And we now continue to see that unified push moving forward. Now, it's really outrageous just on the surface when you see that so many Students for Justice in Palestine chapters and even the National Students for Justice in Palestine organization put out this resistance toolkit to help organize all these rallies and these actions on campuses from coast to coast. And literally their resistance toolkit called this a historic win. And they have used rhetoric echoing the Hamas charter. We saw anti-Israel activists at Berkeley a few days ago. One of our students sent in video. We saw them chanting lines from the Hamas charter. They were chanting, "Every hole, every tree, Palestine will be free." And so the Jewish students are scared, right? The sheep's clothing is off, and you see the wolf. You see that Students for Justice in Palestine are Hamas on campus, and they should not be treated any differently than supporters of ISIS would be treated on campus. And so that's one of the things that we are working on at this hour. By and large, the response by university leaders, university administrators has been tepid. They've either been silent, or in more cases, the response has been quite tepid. And ICC believes that there is a simple and clear blueprint for protecting Jewish and pro-Israel students Jewish students and their allies and friends on college campuses from coast to coast in this country, and that is to end university sponsorship. What other student group would receive university funding, university recognition, membership by in the student government and the student union after calling for violence, after calling for intifada against their fellow students on the heels of the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust? And by the way, not only the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust, but the worst, but a massacre that was conducted in such a way, in such a violent and heinous fashion, as to burn hatred into the heart of the Israeli people for generations, because the greatest fear of Hamas is peace. And that's the context into which this attack came. It wasn't only 50 years since the Six-Day War. It wasn't only coming at a moment of deep division and vulnerability within the Israeli state and democracy and civil society. It came at a moment when Israel was very, very, very close to achieving an historic peace with Saudi Arabia, an historic peace with most of the Arab world. Already that narrative was having such a hopeful and inspirational impact on our college campus constituencies and beyond. The fact that we were able to, in January of last year, bring 40 students, many of them allies and friends of the Jewish community, elite student leaders, to Israel and then the United Arab Emirates to celebrate this growing circle of peace between Israel and her Arab neighbors. What Hamas did deliberately was to snatch away that hope from the people of Israel, from the people of the Palestinian territories and of Gaza, and frankly, the people of this region, because what we were on the verge of was an historic peace, not only between Israel and the Arabs, but also a plan that was in the offing to jumpstart the peace negotiations between the Israelis and the Palestinians. And so we are where we are today. We are offering, in partnership with JNF USA, in partnership with the Baruchon Center, literally around the clock resources to students nationwide. So if you've got students in your orbit who need assistance, here's what I would recommend. Number one, have them as a first line contact local Hillels, local Chabad organizations on the campuses. My team and I are in direct daily contact with the international levels of those organizations. We are coordinating particularly on the security front. I will add that these heinous pro-Hamas rallies on campuses are now being followed up with boycott, divestment, and sanctions campaigns in the student governments across the country. So we are also working on that closely with our partners nationwide. Second, as a second line resource, although we are drinking from a fire hose, you can have any student email info@israelcc.org. That's just info@israelcc.org. And your JNF professionals have that contact information. They've got my info. So if you do need direct immediate assistance from us, we're operating 24/7 in shifts and attempting to triage. So bottom line here is that it's a massive state of emergency globally for the Jewish people, certainly in America and on the campuses. We are deploying emergency organizing resources, emergency micro grants to students to support scores of vigils and rallies. We are also conducting a rapid message testing and polling operation. We're conducting weekly message testing that we are sharing with our partners, including JNF USA, at the national level to help inform messaging. And by the way, I'll tell you what that data shows so far. We've conducted 3 polls. The first one was fielded on October 7th. We were prepared for an emergency like this. And what the polling shows is that at this juncture, at this phase of what is going to be an extended military conflict, most likely, the primary messaging for all audiences in the United States at this hour is to just emphasize the raw brutality and cruelty of these crimes. Our message is simple. These were evil acts, and anyone who tries to justify them was complicit. There will come a time, there will come a phase of this war when we need to message to audiences across the country in a segmented fashion. What do you say X to Y, and Z is the most effective messenger. We are preparing for that. We will enter that phase in the near future. We're not yet there. We need to show everyone the truth of what happened. So I'll pause there, I guess, and I'm happy to take any questions. I guess I saw there were some in the chat. Did you want me just to?
Yeah,
Did
so
you want
what
to
we'll
moderate it?
do, Jacob, first of all, I just want to thank you for being with us today and for what you do every day. Also, I've been asked, there's a lot of people that view this Zoom live and then watch it also at night, the replays. Probably between the replays and the live, it's over 2,000 people a day. So what I've been asked is, a lot of the participants in this Zoom have gone to colleges and universities. I know you mentioned about Hillel, and should there be a writing campaign directly to their colleges? And if so, could there be a template of a letter that should be put together so they hit the major points and get their view directly to the administration?
Absolutely. I'm so glad that question came up, Saul, because that's one of the most critical pieces here that I should have mentioned. Look to the example of Mark Rowan. Look to the example of Mark Rowan, who published an open letter. He's a Penn trustee. He published an open letter to University of Pennsylvania decrying their tepid would probably be a generous characterization of UPenn's response. He and other Penn trustees and other Penn donors are now actually withdrawing their financial support for institutions that do not take action more seriously. You're seeing that happen at Harvard with Wexner. There have been a number of prominent examples of major longtime funders and partners of these universities saying, we will not stand for this Jew hatred. And by the way, we support the First Amendment. No one here is saying that Students for Justice in Palestine, that if these students want to sympathize with the Hamas massacre, that they should be barred from doing that. That's what the First Amendment is all about. It's about protecting the most offensive speech, and we support that. But it doesn't shield the speakers of that speech from criticism or from consequences for that speech. And so to see that every university president who condemned the murder of George Floyd has not yet spoken out and clearly, not both sides, not we need a ceasefire, not we care about everyone, but clearly and strongly condemning the worst hate crime against Jews since the Holocaust is simply outrageous. There's simply no excuse for it. And so, whereas the Jewish students have shown years of solidarity with other marginalized communities that have needed help, now we are the ones who need help. And so I think that's right, Saul. And in terms of your question about, is there a template? One of our close partner organizations in our ICC coalition is called Alums for Campus Fairness. So they are actively running a bunch of petitions right now that are targeting some of the most egregious actions at universities. So you could check that out at campusfairness.org. And so that might be a good resource, Saul. But yeah, right away. And if Students for Justice in Palestine is still a recognized group at a college or university, I think you should reach out and demand that change.
So Jacob, we could listen to you all day here. We have a couple more speakers that are in the waiting room, so we will go over to them. We look forward to you being at Denver with us. I also want to mention that I saw the letter that Ron Lauder wrote to University of Pennsylvania, which was also quite scathing, and clearly he mentioned in his letter about his financial support to UOP. So I think it's working, and we need to continue. So Jacob, thanks so much for being with us. We look forward to seeing you soon. And now, Jewish National Fund USA is committed to fulfilling efforts to provide Zionist education to both Jewish and non-Jewish students and faculty on college campuses, empowering them with the necessary tools to advocate for Israel. Our signature trips, Caravan for Democracy and Faculty Fellowship, are part of this strategic plan. First, we will hear from Professor Erwin Stafford Dormady, Department Chair at the California State University and a 2022 JNF Faculty Fellow participant. This program links scholars from the U.S. across diverse disciplines with their Israeli counterparts to initiate exchanges and cultivate collaboration. Professor, thank you for being here and sharing your experience on campus and how the JNF Faculty Fellow Program has impacted you these past few weeks. Professor?
Oh, Saul, thank you so much. I'm honored that you.
Okay, as you know, this is live. You froze there for a minute, Professor, so let's try again.
Okay.
There you
I'm so honored to be with all of you on day 18. The participants of the Faculty Fellowship to Israel program underwent a transformation when we visited Israel. We were able to come back and speak about culture, food, diversity, politics, social justice, research, innovation, advanced technology. We established relationships to do grant writing and research with our colleagues in Israel. We have undergone another transformation. Much like how people were changed on 9/11, on October 7th, we were transformed from allies and advocates of Israel to warriors for Israel. The long-term systematic invasion of our university campuses is alarming. It's dangerous, and it's contributing to loss of life, not just in Israel, but globally. It's like a sister plan to the ground assault in Israel. The same forces that politicize these crimes against humanity are reaching places of higher learning. It is concerning that students do not seem to take positions informed from informed fact and respectful dialogue. The university protected hate groups chanting for death to Jews, for freedom from the river to the sea. These same groups that celebrated the rape, murder, torture of civilians are freely spreading hate on our campuses. This has become a battle between good and evil. It is alarming. I think it's maybe a reflection of the education system in the United States that students lack critical thought and ability to discuss things respectfully. But it's really alarming how easily student opinion is swayed, especially in the face of all of this mounting evidence. Even torture, rape, murder at a Coachella or Burning Man type music festival that you think they could relate to. These are their peers. It's like they have blinders on and they're not able to think logically. I've spent the last 2 weeks explaining what apartheid is and why naming Israel's actions apartheid is wrong. It is jihadist propaganda and an insult to those who've suffered under apartheid. Last week at a meeting of 100 department chairs and deans from institutions all over the United States and my discipline, I shared the letter from the 10 Israeli university presidents. And many of the US university and administrators that I was sharing this with reported that their presidents, if they released a statement, it was very vanilla flavored statements about we value all life and it's not our practice to take positions in these conflicts. So as a group, we were able to discuss ways to tell the truth about what's happening in Israel while still navigating these cowardly gag orders from our presidents at our institutions. One of my students asked if I was scared to tell the truth, and she's worried for my safety. She said people are being killed that are speaking on the behalf of Israel. Before October 7th, I sometimes would wonder if I lived during World War II, if I would have been quiet, or if I would have spoken out and taken action like my hero, Corrie ten Boom and her family in Holland. I no longer wonder if I am brave enough. Faculty Fellowship to Israel galvanized my courage. And I want to tell all of you, I'm sorry I'm so emotional about this, but I am speaking from my heart. But I tell you this, that it would be the greatest honor of my life to die saving even one Jewish life. I want to tell you that I am your warrior. I'm speaking the truth. I'm fighting against evil. and I'm fighting for good. And I'm just very honored to be asked today to speak about my perspective of what's going on now and how we can be a force of good on our very confused campuses across our great nation. So thank you so much.
So, Professor, thank you for your passionate views today. And, people, even on this Zoom and those that watch at night, don't really understand how important our faculty fellowship program is, and that we take non-Jewish professors from around the country over to Israel to understand, to see everything. We don't hide anything, as you saw on your trip to Israel. If you could tell us just briefly, what was your thoughts before you went to Israel, and what were your thoughts? What were you thinking before you went to Israel, and what did you think when you came back from Israel?
So I had a great privilege of having a very close friend growing up that was Jewish, and as an Irish American Catholic, it was so much fun to go to Passover at their house, and his father would explain why this looked familiar and comparing the Last Supper of Jesus to Passover. And so I grew up with instruction. And so I always wanted to be Jewish. I should take a DNA test to see if there's maybe one drop of blood in me. And so I went there with this incredible bucket list opportunity to visit Israel and look at Israel, not from maybe like a Christian tour that hit all the hot spots, but looking at it academically with 33 faculty of all different disciplines, and to meet people doing the same type of research that I'm doing. How it changed me was just giving me the information that I could speak about. So I could say, I was there, and even though you're hearing this in the news, it's not accurate because I was there, and these are the people that I talked to. And we talked to former prime ministers. We talked to Bedouin leaders in the desert. We talked to Christians making wine in the Galilee. We talked to Druze families. And so, I was able to say I was there, and this is what I saw. One of the things that I've been thinking a lot about, and I don't know how we're doing on time, but I want to tell you a quick story about being welcomed into the Erez Crossing. And we were lucky enough to have a bus driver that was an old Army buddy of the commander of that installation. And so we weren't allowed to take cameras, which was too bad because people told us no one will believe that you were here. But we were able to go behind the scenes and see the big screens of people coming across through the Hamas tent in the distance, and then the Palestine Authority tent, and then cross over. And I am the mother of a special needs, high functioning autistic. And I was very disturbed because watching the video, there was this young man who had to walk through an arch to go through the metal detection and the x-ray machine that did not want to go through. And his mother was distressed and trying to help him. And the soldiers were talking over the intercom saying, ma'am, you cannot touch your son. He needs to walk through on his own. And he was just shaking, and it was very disturbing to me. But then we were able to go on the Israeli side where the Gazans were coming through and speak to them. And so I spoke to 5 Arab men that came across to work for the day because they were not able to earn enough money in Gaza to provide for their families. And as this one big, tough Arab man was talking, he got tears in his eyes, and I was standing in front of him, and we both kind of leaned in. And before I knew it, we were in a huge bear hug. And it was just a dad hugging a mom. And all I could think was, if Hamas could see him hugging a Christian woman from California, they would execute him. And then I had an opportunity to talk to this young man who was now in his wheelchair and recovered. And I just knelt down and looked him in the eyes, and I was sure he couldn't understand what I was saying, but I said, "Oh, you have the most beautiful eyes, and look at that smile." And we just kind of snuggled a little bit, and I told him how wonderful he was. And I was getting up to leave, and the mom leaned over and gave me a side hug and said, "Thank you so much for seeing my son." And she did speak English and heard those words. And that was so transformational for me. But on October 7th, when I learned that the terrorists had destroyed the Erez humanitarian crossing, and they not only killed all of the soldiers that were there, but also all the Gazans that were coming across. So I was upset about these innocent lives. But then a few days later, when we learned that Gazans that had work permits had maps of the kibbutzes where they worked in their pockets with the names of who was sleeping in each bedroom and the dog and all of that, I felt just so fooled and betrayed. And when we hear today arguments about, we want 20 trucks of aid of food to go into Gaza and no one's letting us, I thought about the 20 trucks that I saw from those same kibbutzes that had lost people to Gazan bombs over the years. 20 trucks trundling down into the gate to bring food in. I'm like, well, if Gaza had not invaded, they still would be getting aid from Israel and support from Israel. So just being able to say I was there and this is the truth. And when you hear the propaganda about Israel trying to take over Gaza, that is just not true. They gave Gaza to the Palestinian people. And so it's just a lot of correction of the misinformation that is very prevalent in our news and on our college campuses.
So thank you so much, Professor, for being with us. Your story is very familiar to us. Hundreds of faculty fellows that, like yourself, that have gone over have told us similar type, passionate type of responses. That's why we do this. We've been doing it for years. We'll continue to do it. And I hope we can call on you again to give us some words of inspiration.
Anytime. I am your warrior. I'm here for you. I stand with you.
Thank you so much. And finally, we're going to hear from Rachel Hitz, a student at Penn State University and alumni of our Caravan for Democracy program. Caravan for Democracy takes non-Jewish student leaders from college campuses on a mission to Israel. Rachel, we are grateful that you're here, and please give us some words of wisdom.
Thank you so much. So hi, everybody. My name is Rachel, and I'm a junior at Penn State University. And I had the opportunity to participate in the Jewish National Fund Caravan for Democracy trip nearly a year ago. And at that time, I had absolutely no clue the impact that it would have not only on my college experience, but also just on my life. So for a bit of background about myself to give context to everything else I'm about to say, I was born and raised in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania to Christian parents. However, we do have ethnic Jewish ties through my mother's grandfather, who left Russia in the late 1800s to come to America. So while we're not halakhically Jewish, my parents did emphasize the importance of understanding my heritage by sending me to summer camps at my local Jewish community center and ensuring that I was educated on things like the Holocaust, the State of Israel, and other important Jewish history. So if we fast forward to my freshman year of college, honestly, Judaism in Israel did not take up much brain space until a professor of mine, similar to Professor Dormady here, recommended me to the Caravan for Democracy program after participating in the professor version himself. And I remember my excitement when he told me that there was a way for me to travel to Israel for free, learn about the history and the current events of the region, and connect to a land that held such significance for me personally. However, I was extremely naive about the program itself and the significance of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict at the time, since it was something that I had never encountered before in my life. I genuinely believed, or at least had never really given a second thought to the conflict, and just thought that everyone supported Israel because, you know, how could they not? So I get invited to join the trip, and all of a sudden I'm on a plane leaving the United States for the first time ever to go to a country that is regularly subject to attacks, ostensibly by myself. I was definitely nervous, but I got my first taste of Israel almost immediately after I found my seat on the plane. I was seated next to an Israeli Orthodox Jewish woman and her daughter, both of whom spoke very little English, and I, of course, spoke no Hebrew. And in an effort to be polite, I tried asking the daughter, who was maybe 7 or 8, what her name was, and I was met with a sound that, at the time, having never really heard Hebrew before in my life, it sounded like a sneeze to me. But her mother smiled at my confusion and just asked me what my name was, and I told her that it was Rachel, and her face lit up, and she exclaimed excitedly how her daughter and I shared a name. And that was truly a moment that is forever engraved in my mind whenever I think about Israel and the people. So continuing on, I could talk forever about the actual experiences that we had during our trip, but the highlights include visiting the Kotel on Shabbat, meeting Ken Abrams at Kibbutz Kfar Aza, the Middle Eastern politics presentation from Maddie Freeman, and the social media presentation from Emily Schrader. If you recognize the name of Kibbutz Kfar Aza, it's because it's one of the many kibbutzim that were attacked by Hamas on October 7th. Thankfully, Ken Abrams, the woman I met there, is all right, but many other residents of Kfar Aza are not. This tragically connects me to where I am today. I also had the opportunity to visit Israel this past May with the Hasbara Fellowships program, which some of you may be familiar with. So between the Hasbara trip and the Caravan for Democracy trip, I have a lot of tools and knowledge that are at my disposal that I can put to use. This semester, I became a board member for Lines for Israel, which is Penn State's pro-Israel student organization, and I have also become extremely involved with Penn State Hillel. Caravan for Democracy was a jumping off point that gave me the tools and motivation I needed to become part of such an important fight, and that is the fight of pro-Israel students across the US. My main goal with being on the board for Lines for Israel is to show other students that the Israel that actually exists is not the Israel that is portrayed in the media. I have seen firsthand the love, dedication, and hopes that Israelis, both Jewish and Arab, and Palestinians hold for the region, their communities, and ultimately each other. The international community, especially passionate young advocates, are far too quick to make assumptions about peoples and places that they do not understand. And I want to be a resource to bring the truth to college students, not just here at Penn State, but all over the US and especially online. Having had these experiences on the ground, thanks to Jewish National Fund, I'm able to say I was there and combat misinformation as much as possible. Thankfully, Penn State has a large and vibrant Jewish community that is then supported by the networks of students connected to that Jewish community through Greek Life, other student organizations, or just being friends with Jewish students. While we have been experiencing an unnerving amount of pro-Palestinian rallies being held, the attendance at those events has not been greater than the attendance at our Israel events. Currently, we are working towards planning a Walk for Peace event next week that will culminate with a Unity Shabbat dinner at Hillel. The goal of this event is to connect to students that may have opposing or conflicting opinions on Israel to us, but want to share our support, or that want to support our shared ultimate goal of peace. The proceeds will be donated to American Friends of Magen David Adom. Additionally, we are holding an event the week after to collect donations and make care packages to send to Israeli soldiers in need. Both events are being sponsored by Lines for Israel, and I couldn't be prouder of our community. Jewish National Fund has been a great help here on Penn State's campus, both through the knowledge and skills I have gained from being an alumni of the Caravan for Democracy program and through the support that I have received from JNF staff. Dove Gordon, who I believe is on this call right now, has been so helpful in giving us resources on how to navigate keeping our community safe during pro-Palestinian rallies and how we are able to combat the violence they incite. For Penn State as a whole and the world, I want to caution students against picking a side on this conflict simply from what you've seen in the news recently and Instagram posts or on TikTok. The conflict between Israel and Palestine is one that has thousands of years of history, nuance, and suffering that must be understood before a side can be chosen. I urge my peers to do their research on this topic and use their voices to call for peace and the prioritization of civilian life over all else. If you're interested in hearing more about my work on Penn State's campus, the personal and religious effects my time in Israel has had for me, or more specifics about what I actually did while I was in Israel, please feel free to reach out. Additionally, I will be attending the Jewish National Fund College Summit in Denver, Colorado this December, so hopefully I will see some of you there. Thank you all for your time, and I'm praying for better days to come.
So Rachel, first of all, thank you for being here, but it should be obvious to everybody that we only select the brightest students from across the country to participate in Caravan for Democracy. As you probably know, there's a lot more applications than we can even handle. So we do a very thorough research before we select, and obviously we did a great job with selecting you. I've just one question for you and I'm asking this question because we've heard in the past from other Caravan for Democracy participants that their parents were not necessarily encouraging them to go. They were fearful of what, it's a difficult area to be in sometimes, Israel. How did your parents respond to you applying for this program?
So my parents have always been, I'm an only child, and my parents have been always extremely supportive of everything that I've tried to do in my life. And it was the same when I decided to apply and then was later accepted to the Caravan for Democracy program. I think they were a little apprehensive of putting me on a plane like that because prior to that, I've never really traveled without them or outside the US. But I think now they're almost kind of more worried that I've put myself in the middle of this whole community and conflict, because I'm actually supposed to go to Israel again in December with Penn State Hillel. And so I think they're more worried about that trip coming up. But when I originally went on Caravan for Democracy, they were extremely supportive. And I think that's partially because of our Jewish heritage that we have on my mom's side. And also because we're all very logical people. And so when I was telling my parents how I wanted to learn more about the conflict, they were like, okay, well, the best way to do that is go there and talk to people that experience it on a daily basis firsthand. So I'm very grateful to have supportive parents.
Great. Yeah, that's great. There's a lot of people chatting on here, Rachel, that want to meet you in Denver. So you're going to be very busy, including my wife.
I will drop my email in the chat, so everyone feel free to email me.
I just saw my wife's chat come up. Can't wait to meet you, Rachel. So thanks for your time, and go Nittany Lions.
Yes.
So thank you again. And tomorrow we'll be back with former Ambassador to the United States, Michael Oren. And Thursday, we will hear from Avi Meir, Editor-in-Chief of the Jerusalem Post. Ambassador Oren recently reconfirmed his commitment to be with us at our global conference in Denver, November 30th to December 3rd. We hope to see you all there to gather as a global community, as one people, to show our support and dedication to the land and people of Israel. We thank you for your continued unwavering support. We urge you to invite others to join these important briefings and to support our resilience campaign at jnf.org/support Israel. Every dollar goes directly to those people in areas that are in greatest need. You can also go to jnf.org to register for our conference in Denver. So please, this is going to be a conference like you've never seen before. With that, we're going to sign off, reminding you that we will see you tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Thank you for joining us. I'm Israel Chai.